first, you can just tell Anthony Albanese's heart just isn't in keeping our borders strong, and it never was, nor is the Immigration Minister keen on it. In fact, I'll show you extraordinary speech he gave saying he got into politics because he wanted to help boat people stay, not to stop them. And the result, Labor's been landed in another mess. In fact, two, not just the boat of illegal immigrants that's landed in Western Australia after Albanese cut the budget for the department that's supposed to be looking out for boats. No, you wait until I tell you how many Palestinians the Albanese government is really letting in from the terrorist-run Gaza and West Bank. And this is the key point. The Prime Minister's heart just isn't in tough borders, which is why Albanese never said boo as a minister of the Rudd and Gillard Labor governments, which let in more than 50,000 boat people and let 1,200 drown at sea. And why even after the Liberals did stop the boats by turning them back, Albanese was still saying, no, I couldn't possibly do that myself.
And when we talk about boats, of course, we're talking about people on boats. I'm of the view that I would just find out, I couldn't ask someone else to do something that I couldn't see myself doing. And if people were in a boat, including families and children, I myself couldn't turn that around.
Has he really changed? Because you can tell that no one in his government is really that worried about boat people landing again, because not one of his staff or his ministers, supposedly bothered to tell him last Friday that a boatload of more than 40 illegal immigrants from Bangladesh, India and Pakistan had indeed just landed undetected on West Australian shores. And so Albanese walked into a press conference on the Central Coast totally unprepared, or so it seemed, for the very first question about exactly that boat.
An asylum seeker boat has arrived off to the Western Australian coastline. Do you know anything about that?
I've been travelling in the car, so I'm not. I haven't been advised about that.
I'm calling bull on that. I mean, for a start, sitting in the back of a Commonwealth limousine, humming along the highway, is exactly a perfect time for a Prime Minister to catch up on the news. Particularly now, I mean, 50 years after the mobile telephone was invented. So the honest answer would have been, yes, of course I knew, my staff aren't stupid. Or, well, look, I tell you another lie. Actually, no one cared enough about this boat to tell me. You take your pick. Now, staff didn't bother, apparently. That's his story. His Home Affairs Minister, Claire O'Neill, didn't bother. Certainly his Immigration Minister, Andrew Giles, didn't bother. And there I might think, well, actually, why would Giles care? Because get this, he used to be an immigration lawyer before politics and told Parliament he actually got elected because he wanted to get in Parliament to help boat people who effectively hijacked the Tampa, a ship that had rescued them, forcing the captain to sail them to Australia and not Indonesia.
In 2001, I was a small part of a legal team that acted on behalf of the asylum seekers on the Tampa. This involvement, more than anything else, led me towards seeking election to this place. You really think Andrew Giles now wants to keep out boat people? That Albanese does? I mean, so look, it's no wonder really that people in Pakistan or Bangladesh thought, hey, maybe this government is now a soft touch, and check what might made them think that, apart from what you just saw. For a start, this government cut $600 million from border security and home affairs in its last budget, which opposition leader Peter Dutton today claimed meant surveillance flights to check for boats had been cut.
Well, the reason the boat got there is because the government has suspended or cancelled surveillance flights.
The people who were unauthorised arrivals into Western Australia just days ago now find themselves on Nauru, and they will not be settled here in Australia. We have clear positions in place. We'll continue to do so. Peter Dutton will continue to be a cheer squad for things that actually undermine our borders.
Anyone taking bets that they won't be settled in Australia? But that wasn't the only signal that Albanese would go soft in our borders. Just 4 days after he won the 2022 election, he let a family of illegal immigrants from Sri Lanka stay in Biloela in Queensland, even though our courts had agreed they weren't real refugees. He then let 19,000 other illegal immigrants on temporary protection visas actually become permanent residents. Then there are other signs that this government treats our immigration system as something more for the benefit of foreigners than for the benefit of Australians. I mean, last financial year, the government let in an astonishing 500,000 immigrants net, even though we're already short of homes even for Australians. It also let in more than 2,000 Palestinians from terrorist-run Gaza and West Bank come here since the start of the war with Israel. Now, I know when I say 2,000, you heard the Foreign Minister tell us she was going to let in 860 Palestinians on temporary visas, but that didn't turn out to be the full story at all. Because here is a Deputy Secretary of the Home Affairs Department telling a Senate committee last week that let in a lot more and fast.
Between 7th of October and 31st of December 2023, the Department granted 2,127 visitor visas to people declaring Palestinian citizenship, and an additional 148 migration and temporary visas were granted.
What's the average processing time for a visa like this?
Globally, for a visitor visa, the median processing time is 1 day.
1 day. I would hope the government took weeks or even months to check out people coming from Gaza, which has been under the rule of the Hamas terrorist group for years now. Now, the Prime Minister has also ramped up our refugee intake to 20,000 a year, mostly from Africa, the Middle East and Asia. Is that to our benefit? And has promised to let 280 so-called climate refugees come in from Tuvalu every year, even though Tuvalu is actually growing and not drowning. And of course, there's Albanese's other immigration disaster, freeing 149 foreign criminals from immigration detention, including murderers and 37 sex offenders, before he even took basic steps to protect Australians. I mean, seriously, join the dots. This government just doesn't seem to care enough about keeping our borders secure. And now we're seeing the results. Pretty inevitable, I'd say.